Hello and welcome to the We're Not Experts History podcast. Before we get started today, James and I wanted to include a brief note for our listeners. So this episode, it's a little bit darker than what we normally talk about. We're looking into, it's historical, but it's a true crime investigation, and it involves a series of murders that took place in London in the 1960s. So we're not going to be talking about anything too graphic, but it is quite a mature subject matter. So listener discretion is advised. So now that bit's out of the way, James, the title of this podcast is Shadows Over Hammersmith. So where are we heading with this?
Unsurprisingly, Hammersmith.
I
But
wouldn't have guessed.
just to be a little bit more descriptive, we're going into London, but
Yeah.
to a very specific, contrasting moment in time. And as you said, this is going to be in the mid 1960s.
So the swinging 60s. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what everybody thinks about when you think of the 60s. You
yeah,
picture Carnaby Street, the Beatles, mini skirts. So there was this massive explosion of fashion and youth culture and modern freedom, if you like. And you always imagine it to be really vibrant and optimistic, but I guess you're going to be painting quite a different picture today.
yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk about miniskirts if you'd like to, but um, we're going to see that swinging 60s was like a glittering facade,
Mm.
even though it was real for a lot of people. That's probably
Mm-hmm.
people with money, but it
Yeah.
was a hub of social change, and women were entering the workforce in much greater numbers. But beneath this bright, very romanticised lens, London was
Mm-hmm.
going through some really turbulent times, and there
Right.
were deep-seated inequalities. There was major racial tensions, especially following like the post-war immigration, which led to unrest in places like Notting Hill, and massive poverty, like pockets of poverty. And there was a
All right.
report done in late 1965 that showed that there was around 7.5 million people in the UK who were still considered to be living in poverty.
All right. So the whole swinging 60s thing, really, that was only a reality for a very select few and not the
Exactly, yeah.
UK as a whole. Right.
Yeah, and it was right into this very complex, contrasting atmosphere that this chilling series of events began to cast like a very long, dark shadow over West London. So between 64 and 65, a succession of female bodies was discovered primarily in or near the River Thames, right around the Hammersmith area.
Right. So you've got the city trying to protect this ultra modern, liberated image, and then you've got a predator operating in the background. That's quite.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
So these killings shared some deeply disturbing similarities, most notably the state in which the victims were found,
Right.
which immediately caught the attention of the media. Surprise, surprise. And the press wanted a dramatic headline and drew a grim
Of course they
parallel
did.
to, yeah, of course they did, to London in the Victorian era. And they swiftly dubbed this killer Jack the Stripper.
Jack the Stripper. That's very
Jack the
imaginative.
Stripper. Yeah,
I mean, it's a very tabloid style nickname, isn't it? But I
yeah,
suppose it really cemented the terror in the public mind because, of course, everybody's straight away thinking about Jack the Ripper.
yeah. It did, and it created that aura of fear that it didn't just stay in West London; it spread further afield. And these Hammersmith nude murders, as they were officially known, who officially known knew it. So I don't know, but it forced London to confront a very dark reality, and
Mm.
it became one of Scotland Yard's largest and most resource-heavy investigations to date. And with obviously the entire nation were watching on anxiously as the police tried to track this person down.
Okay, so let's look beneath the surface a bit. Where does the actual investigation begin?
Okay, it actually begins a few years before this whole media storm really kicked off,
Right,
back in the summer of 1959, and the first victim widely linked to what became the Hammersmith nude murders was a 21-year-old woman named Elizabeth Figg, and she
right.
was originally from Cheshire. But on the 17th of June, her body was found by police officers who were just on a routine patrol in a park called Duke's Meadows in Chiswick.
Chiswick. I don't really know West London actually. My ancestors all originate from East London, so West London. So whereabouts is that? Where you're describing?
No, but I don't know the area either, so I've had to do a little bit of work. But from what
Okay,
I gather, it's a park right on the north bank of the River Thames.
okay.
Back then, it was well known for being a very secluded, dark spot, like spot after hours.
A Ducks Park.
Dark spark after hours, you get them. So yeah, it was also a dark spot. So the
Right.
post mortem showed she had been asphyxiated, so manual strangulation, and her
Okay.
body was found partially undressed. So
Right.
crucially, her underwear, shoes, and a white handbag were completely missing. They'd gone, and that
Okay.
hinted from the start at something deliberate beyond just your immediate violence.
Yeah, because when items like that disappear, it kind of suggests that the attacker is removing evidence or taking personal tokens. So, did the police manage to identify her quite quickly? I know she was
It,
out of area, and
yeah, it was incredibly difficult because in the early stages, identifying victims was a massive challenge because there were no personal effects left behind. And
right.
the authorities had to rely on public appeals, and they actually distributed post-mortem photographs to newspapers.
Oh, awful.
Yeah. Yeah. In Elizabeth's case, it was her roommate and her mother who independently recognised her from the paper, and it really shows how heavily they relied on public assistance for the modern forensics that most people are aware of today.
That must have been absolutely awful for her
I could
family
find out terrible.
imagine. I mean, it's bad enough nowadays when you hear about these that you find out through Facebook, but imagine opening the paper and you see a post-mortem photograph of one of your loved ones. I can't. But you mentioned that there were a succession of bodies.
Yeah.
When did the next one appear?
Well, not until 4 years later,
Oh,
which
okay.
really complicated things.
Yeah.
So in November, this is now November 1963, the body of a 22-year-old woman called Gwyneth Rees was discovered, or Rees. She was originally from Wales, but moved to London via Essex, where
Okay.
she'd lived with her sister. And she went missing in September, and her body was eventually found at a household refuge, like disposal site
Okay.
on a place called Townmere Road in another place called Mortlake.
Right. Okay. I'm completely lost with the geography. So is Mortlake
Yeah.
anywhere near Chiswick?
According to the case files, it's only about a mile away from Duke's Meadows. So Gwyneth was found completely naked, except for like a single stocking.
Right.
Tragically, her body had been accidentally decapitated by a shovel
Oh,
during waste levelling at the site. Yeah, and that made the initial examination really, really difficult. But it was
yeah.
clear that she'd come to a very violent end and had just been dumped there.
Awful.
So yeah, then a few months later, we'd come up to February '64. A third woman was found, and she was 30 years old, and her name was Hannah Tailford, and she was originally from Northumberland.
Okay. Where was she discovered?
She was found floating on the Thames foreshore,
Oh,
just below a place called Linden House, which is in Hammersmith,
right.
and this is the area that ended up giving the murders their official name. And she'd also been strangled, but there was very like an incredibly grim detail with Hannah that several of her teeth were missing, and they the reports were that her underwear had been stuffed into her mouth.
Oh, that's horrific. So
Oh,
it's starting to feel quite personal and controlled now. Yeah. And the timeline seems to be speeding up as well.
yeah.
There seems to be a smaller gap between.
Yeah, I mean that you read that earlier gap of about 4 years, and that makes me wonder what's gone on there. That he's either been caught, or he's had a family, or he has committed offences, and they've just not been linked to him. But
Yeah.
we're now
Or
going
not been discovered, not been found,
yeah, exactly.
possibly.
Yeah, so we're now going 2 months later, so 8th of April 64, and a fourth victim was found on the banks of the Thames again, but back at Chiswick. And this was a 26-year-old called Irene Lockwood, and she was originally from Nottinghamshire. So just like the others,
They're all
she
out of
was,
area as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
they've all come down to London, yeah, probably looking for
Mm.
work.
Yeah.
But she was also completely naked.
So even without knowing the streets of London, that's four
Yeah,
women. All of
yeah,
them are found either naked or partially undressed, all been killed
yeah,
by I'm going to say strangulation because I couldn't
yeah,
pronounce the other
yeah,
word.
yeah, the asphyxiation, yeah,
And they've all been dropped within the same general riverside area.
yeah.
So at this point, did the police know for certain what they were dealing with?
So I think it was Irene Lockwood's murder
Right.
that completely, I think you could say it solidified the police's fears, and there was no, like, you couldn't get past it anymore. There was a serial killer
Yeah,
actively operating in that part of London,
that is scary.
and yeah, the repeated discoveries in such similar locations created just a huge wave of alarm through the local community,
Right.
and the pressure on Scotland Yard to find answers was intensifying every day.
So where did they turn to next? I mean, did they manage to uncover like a common thread, or were they finding any physical evidence at the scene? I know it was very different. Forensics were very different then, but
Yeah, they did. It was the next two discoveries that finally gave them like a clear pattern and their biggest forensic breakthrough. So
mm,
they were now on the 24th of April 64, and there's a body of a 22-year-old woman called Helen Bartholomew. She was found, but unlike the others, she wasn't in or right next to the river. Her body was left in an alleyway at the back of Boston Manor Road in Brentford.
oh, okay. So a little bit different. So she's on land rather than in the water, and I bet that made a
Yeah.
massive difference for forensics because obviously water it washes a lot of evidence away.
It made a huge difference. So
Mm,
the post-mortem confirmed that she had been strangled, but because the body was better preserved,
right.
the scientists found microscopic flecks of paint on her.
Oh,
And
okay.
but it wasn't just any old paint. It was a specific type commonly used in the manufacturing of cars.
Oh, car paint. Okay, so that's
Car
quite
paint.
specific, actually. Um,
Yeah,
so did that lead anywhere immediately, or did they have to wait for more evidence?
they tragically they didn't have to wait for long. So now it's 3 months later, 14th of July, and a 30-year-old mother of four named Mary Fleming was found. And she was Scottish, but she grew up in
Right,
England, and
right.
her body was discovered in a cul-de-sac. And when the forensic teams examined her, they found the exact same telltale flakes of this industrial paint.
Oh, okay, so that's completely connected those two
Yeah.
women. Did anyone see anything suspicious um, where Mary was found?
Yes, they did actually.
Oh,
So
okay.
hours before she was discovered, two men who were painting a nearby restaurant noticed a suspicious figure with a grey van near that cul-de-sac. And
Hmm,
between the van sighting, or between the sighting of the van and the paint,
right.
Scotland Yard suddenly they've now got this absolute, that's their best lead,
Oh,
and it
okay.
strongly suggested the killer either worked in or had regular access to an auto body repair shop
Oh,
or
okay.
some kind of industrial spraying premises.
So that really narrows down the type of person that they're looking for. So what about the way the killer was actually operating? Was there a pattern to when and how these women were being taken?
So there was a very distinct and very methodical timeline. And the police worked out that the victims were frequently being picked up late at night and usually between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. And their bodies were being dumped hours later, so
Right.
like 5 in the morning. And because of
Okay.
those very specific hours, the investigators began to theorize that this killer was likely a night shift worker or a night
Okay.
watchman, or someone whose job gave him a perfect excuse to be driving around in the dead of night without anyone thinking it was suspicious.
Oh, okay. And also as well, you've got the fact that all of them have been found either completely naked or partially undressed. And you mentioned earlier that it was very controlled.
Yeah, so it's entirely like ritualistic.
Right.
And also the initial analysis didn't consistently show signs of sexual assault. So the
Right.
meticulous removal of their clothing, and in some cases even things like false teeth, pointed to a very like deeply disturbing, psychologically driven motive. So the police believe this killer was intentionally keeping these items as trophies.
It's quite frightening how organized this person was. And
Yeah,
it's actually quite amazing as well that, this is the mid 1960s. So this is before DNA or modern technology.
yeah,
Um, and it's amazing that they could do so much just with these microscopic paint fragments. That's the only
yeah.
clue they've really got at this stage.
Yeah, I suppose like the discovery of DNA might not have even been 10 years old at this point, but
No.
the rest of it really was like early milestones for forensic science, really. So back then, your forensics was still very rudimentary, but
Yeah.
those tiny little paint flecks became far more valuable to the investigation than your traditional fingerprints or like unreliable eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
So this allowed Scotland Yard to stop guessing, completely shift their focus to like a targeted geographical and or like occupational profile. So they
Right.
knew exactly what kind of workplace they needed to look for.
Okay, so they knew that they were, or once they knew they were looking for a paint spraying facility or an auto body shop.
Yeah.
How did Scotland Yard actually go about finding it? Because I know, there would have been quite a few.
Well, what they did, they launched one of their most one of the most extensive murder hunts in the history of the UK. So
Wow.
a massive task force was assembled, which is like up to 140 officers, including female police officers and cadets, all
Okay.
placed under the leadership of a prominent Scotland Yard detective called Superintendent John De Rose. And he
Okay.
was known for being really incredibly methodical, and he basically ordered his team to knock on every single door in West London. So in
Wow.
total, they took approximately 120,000 statements.
Wow.
That's
That is
yeah,
the sheer logistics of managing that much paper
yeah.
without computers. That's mind-boggling. I mean, did that massive door-to-door sweep, did it actually lead them to the source of the paint after all of that?
Well, it was actually those forensics we talked about that narrowed it down first, and
Yeah.
the investigators managed to trace those like specific industrial paint flecks back to a very precise location, which was an
Okay.
unused electrical substation at the Heron Trading Estate in Acton, in
Right.
London, which was right opposite that substation is a paint spraying shop.
Whoa. So they've literally found the exact epicenter. I bet that gave them a bit of a boost.
Well, it would have completely like refocused their inquiry.
Yeah.
So the detectives, they straight away they go straight launch a mammoth like huge sweep
Right.
covering a 24-mile radius along the Thames, meticulously checking every single property, business, and any individual with links to paint spraying facilities or that specific trading estate as well. So
Okay.
yes, as the police are closing in on like, the geography, the public panic was boiling over, and this was the exact moment that the newspapers coined that sensational nickname of Jack the Stripper.
Yeah, because that really helps matters,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
So,
exactly what you need.
because I suppose, yeah, they're just drawing a direct parallel to Jack the Ripper from the
Yeah,
previous century, just
scaremongering.
to frighten the
Yeah,
life out of people. I mean, that must have put a massive amount of pressure on the police, on the superintendent.
the pressure from uh, the everyday public and politicians
Mm,
was colossal, and
I
the
bet.
killer. It was almost seemed like the killer was operating with complete impunity.
Yeah,
So even though Superintendent DeRose had that brilliant forensic lead pointing
right.
to the trading estate, the sheer volume of potential suspects was overwhelming.
I
And
bet.
getting that concrete evidence against one specific person was proving almost impossible. So DeRose made a highly tactical and quite controversial move, and he called a massive press conference and boldly announced to the public and to the killer that the police had narrowed down the suspect pool to just 20 men, and they were in the process of closing in on them.
Was that actually true? Did they actually have it down to 20 men? I said actually
No,
twice in the same sentence, but
no, it was complete crap. He
I thought it might
deliberately,
have been.
yeah, exaggerated their progress to put pressure on the killer
Right.
and to calm the public, and it just highlights just how desperate and probably frustrated Scotland Yard was. And they were running one of the largest operations the country had ever seen, yet the perpetrator, this killer, was still out there lurking in the shadows.
So, did that massive bluff by the superintendent actually work? Did it force the killer into making a mistake, or did they find someone who fit the profile?
So it actually brought them right to their prime suspect.
Oh,
So, yeah, so the police have narrowed their focus onto this heron trading estate, and they zeroed in on a Scottish security guard named Mungo Island, which is
Mungo
confusing,
Island.
from
Okay,
Scotland.
sounds like a place,
And
but
his
yeah, and he's from
his
Scotland,
job,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So his job meant he had total access to the exact area where those crucial paint flecks were traced, and he was routinely mobile during the late night hours.
So he fits the profile perfectly, but did they manage to question him?
Well, not long after they made that connection to the industrial estate, Ireland took his own life
Oh,
by carbon monoxide poisoning, and he left a note that simply read, "I can't stick it any longer." And because
oh,
that happened right as the net was tightening around his workplace, Superintendent DeRose and many others were absolutely convinced that they'd found their man. He was the killer.
yeah, it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? Did they find any of the victims' missing clothing or any of the other trophies at his house? So I assume they would have searched his house.
Well, that's but there's a catch here. They found absolutely no direct physical evidence
Oh,
connecting him to the crimes. And to make things even more complicated, later research on it suggests that he actually had an alibi for one of the murders, placing him up
okay.
in Scotland at the time. So while he stayed as a strong suspect, there's conclusive proof that well, it was never found, it was never established.
Oh,
And the case officially to this day remains unsolved.
really? So near and yet so far. Um, so have there been any other theories, or did it all just stop with this Mungo Island chap?
Now, when the first time I ever heard of this,
Mm,
it was quite a few years ago, and Mungo Island had never been named because he hadn't been convicted. They never named him, so
right.
it's only in recent years I think his name's come up.
Okay.
But there's also a few very fascinating suspects which have been put forward by investigators as well as authors as they're looking at this. And there was
Mm,
one. There was a Welsh fella named Harold Jones, and the
right.
BBC did a documentary on this bloke.
Right.
And as a teenager, he had been convicted for murdering two young girls in Wales, and he was released from prison during the Second World War and moved to London. And he was living right in the Hammersmith area at the time of the murders, and crucially, he worked as an auto body mechanic.
Oh, so he had the violent history and the
Yeah,
exact professional access to the industrial paint. That sounds like quite the link.
it does though. It really does. It obviously it still remains unproven. He was never convicted for it. It's just a link, is all it is.
Just a
And there was,
theory.
yeah. So there was even highly, like more highly sensational theory linking a fellow called Freddie Mills, who was a former British heavyweight champion boxer,
Oh, okay.
and some publications tried to connect him to the murders through organised crime figures like the Cray twins.
All right.
But the official police stance never supported it. They didn't believe it. And they found no evidence at all connecting Mills or the Crays to any of the victims.
It sounds like the type of wild speculation that naturally happens to fill the void when you have these
Yeah,
cold cases that stay cold for decades. So, are the official files still locked away?
most of them are. And
Right.
those official files were placed under a 100-year embargo,
Oh,
which obviously severely limits not my access, your access, everyone's access to them.
yeah.
So some details have trickled out over the years through like the freedom of information,
Right.
as well as journalism as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
interestingly, there are like modern experts have done retrospective geographic profiling on the case,
Yeah.
which is a modern like, mythology where you
Yeah. Yeah.
analyse crime scenes to map out a killer's like his geographical comfort zone.
So, did the modern mapping align with what Durose's team found?
It so that mapping suggests the killer's primary anchor point is residence of likely like a hotspot right in the
Mm,
centre. It was in the centre of Hammersmith itself,
right.
and that kind of technology had existed back then. If it had, it might have
Right.
completely transformed the hunt.
It's quite a scary thought that you've got this predator operating in the middle of a city which is trying to celebrate modern liberation, and it's still a mystery today.
Yeah, it's it, it really is that ultimate shadow
Yeah, I
over the
can see
killing
why you went
sixties,
for that
really.
title.
Yeah, you see, yeah. While everyone remembers the era for the overrated Beatles and fashion and that massive wave of social liberation, there's these brutal killings that just sort of serve as a very stark reminder of London's seedy underbelly,
Mm.
as well as the vulnerabilities that women still faced in society, and
It
probably still, well, they do still face today.
Yeah, but it creates such a massive contrast, doesn't it? Because on one hand, you have this glittering progressive capital, and on the other, you've got this heavy climate of fear. And like you said, it casts a shadow over West London.
Exactly. And the investigation itself was monumental.
Mm,
As I said before, it's one of Scotland Yard's largest and most intensive manhunts up to that point,
mm,
and it really highlighted both the absolute dedication of the police force and at the
yeah,
same time the real limitations of forensic science in the 1960s.
yeah.
They had that brilliant breakthrough tracking down the industrial paint flecks, and they had strong circumstantial evidence against the prime suspect. But without modern tools, they just couldn't get that definitive arrest or conviction.
Which is exactly why this mystery has endured for decades, I
Yeah,
guess, and it continues to show up in books and documentaries and
yeah,
these true crime programs that my mother-in-law loves to watch.
otherwise,
And the fact that, oh God, I don't. The fact that the official files are still under that long embargo, it just keeps the speculation going because we can't see the actual files. So it's all that
yeah, I think,
speculation, as I said.
yeah, yeah, it really does. It's left like a legacy of tragedy for those women and their families,
Yeah,
but it's also a testament to that enduring human need for answers.
yeah,
even when it was sort of like the history stays completely silent, there is, I think, the reason true crime is so fascinating to many people. It's either how they were caught or the mystery. People want to know.
Yeah. It does make you wonder, though, with how much forensic science has changed, if there's any hope for cold cases like this one. I mean, you hear about DNA profiling and modern data
Yeah,
analysis solving these decades old mysteries all the time now.
yeah. I suppose there's always a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
You've got your modern advancements, which have revolutionised how police can revisit these old cases. When once upon a time they thought there was no hope of ever getting an answer, but with
Mm.
the Hammersmith murders, a lot of the original physical evidence may no longer exist, or it might not be in a good, decent state for modern testing. But
Yeah.
even without that, your ongoing interest sometimes leads to new interpretations of what's in the surviving files, or people spotting details that were completely overlooked at the time.
It's like any piece of research on any topic, when you get caught on it. Family history is a great example. You hit what is a brick wall, you cannot get any
Yeah,
further, but you give it a break, go back to it with a fresh pair of eyes in sort of 6 months to
spot
a
something.
year.
Yeah,
Suddenly it was there all the time, but you just couldn't see it before.
yeah,
Slightly different scenario there, but
yeah,
I'm
no,
sure
no,
you knew what
yeah.
I was
Sometimes,
getting at. It's kind
even
of
if
similar.
yeah, someone else might look at it and see something you've completely
Yes,
missed or
exactly.
interpret it differently. I mean, I will add
Exactly.
this before we come to an end that there is a lot of detail from these that I've left out that I didn't feel the need, because it is the sort of stuff I would expect to see in the tabloid press. But
Yes.
the fact that he's taken the lives of these young women, and then I think we should always remember that they are mothers and sisters and aunts and daughters. But what he did with them was horrendous,
Mm,
absolutely appalling. And
yeah.
if it wasn't Mungo Island, it meant there was someone, a vile human being, still out there somewhere.
Mm. Well, let's hope that one day they do open these files and they do relook at this case so those women and their families could get the closure that they deserve. But thank you for bringing this case to light. Not the nicest of topics that
No,
we've discussed, but sometimes it's
yeah,
necessary to bring these things to light and
yeah. I
give
think,
them an
especially
airing.
from my point of view, obviously we've never done anything like true crime
No,
on
we
this, but
haven't.
it's one that has never been solved. You never know. If one person's listened to this podcast ever, then it might be the person that goes and has a look into this and finds something new.
Finds a vital clue. You just never know, do you?
You never
You
know.
never know. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you next time.